What about now? It says it's starting. All right. All right, I'm going to start over that for the YouTube audience. Short introduction. Robert Nixon again. Threat intelligence at Synovus, among other things. I'm going to talk about open source intelligence and open source intelligence, open source infrastructure. To begin, what is open source intelligence? Open source intelligence is any information that you can get from a public service through research of your own. It doesn't require any type of paid subscriptions or special access. You can get it from social media. You can get it from WhoIsData. You can get it from internet registrars, anything like that. And you can, with that information, if you don't have the context around that type of information, then it's just data. It's not intelligence. So when you get context through either attacks at your organization or published threat reports, then you can tie those pieces of data to a particular piece of malware or a particular threat actor. And then you know what that threat actor is using and what he's going after. So you can see if your personal devices or your organization is a target for that type of person. Keep hitting the wrong button. Max Mickey slide. All right, so I'm going to get into a couple models because this is going to get into reasons and how we store data in our open source platforms. So the kill chain model was created by Lockheed Martin. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say controversy about kill chain model, but some people love it, some people hate it. But you don't have to trap yourself into using the model exactly as how they wrote it. It's just a framework, buckets to put your data into. So when you have an event in your organization or anywhere, things are going to hit at different points in the kill chain. So reconnaissance is just me going out, looking at your LinkedIn profile, seeing who your daughter is, seeing that you go to soccer games on Saturday, you went to CSU, and now I can weaponize, next step, a phishing email that says, hey man, don't remember me from CSU? Here's some pictures of me and my daughter and your daughter playing soccer. I saw you at the game because you posted it, I'm not going to say that you posted it, but I know that you posted it because I've been looking at your public profile on Facebook, and you're going to click that more often than not. And that's how they're going to deliver the payload to you, the initial payload. And then that payload, that delivery, whether it's a phishing email with an attachment, that's a Word doc, might have a macro in it, and it's going to exploit a vulnerability on your system. And that vulnerability may be a problem with Word, or you may be the vulnerability. Maybe it just needs human interaction to click the, yes, run macros on my machine. And it may not say enable security macros. It may say click here to see my awesome video, but it's actually the button that activates macros. And then once you click that, it's going to run code on the backside that you're not even going to see, and it's going to download stage 2. More often than not, there's a stage 2. And that's going to be from your command and control. And you could have multiple. You could have the initial download of the malcode from one channel. It installs, and then it does actions on objectives. This is what the threat actor was all about. So he's trying to exfiltrate something off your machine. He's trying to destroy your machine. He's trying to deny access to your machine. He's trying to run a Bitcoin miner on your machine. So That's the whole process from what they do to figure out how to weaponize the malware they want to send you, and then through to what they want to gain, why they're doing this in the first place. And you may have multiple kill chains for one event. So you may have one kill chain that stops at delivery because it got blocked by the email gateway. But that same threat actor saw that it was blocked on the gateway, or saw that that user didn't exist because you didn't block bounce backs from your organization. So he choose the new. Maybe he had the email wrong. Maybe it wasn't Robert Nixon at Synovus.com. Maybe it was Nixon Robert. So he tries that. And then it gets through to exploitation. But it's the same incident for the organization, but it may be multiple kill chains in that incident. And you can make your own kill chain. It's just buckets to put data in. And that's more incident response than threat intel, but it does have its place in threat intel because it works with something the threat intelligence community created called the diamond model. So this is how you make sure that the data you're gathering has enough context to be considered intelligence. So as you can see in the diamond model, you're going to have infrastructure, you're going to have capability or a TTP, and TTPs are tactics, techniques, and procedures. So it's what a bad guy does on a daily basis to try to attack his victims. You're going to have an adversary and you're going to have a victim. And you can see how they all intersect. So adversary uses infrastructure, the infrastructure connects to a victim, the capability exploits the victim, vice versa. If you have at least 3 points of this diamond model, then that's considered good intelligence. If you have less than 3, it's good IOCs maybe to look for other triggers in your environment. If you can get all 4, then you've got attribution, which means that you know who is attacking you, which is very hard to get, but is not unattainable. A lot of the times you'll always have the victim, and you'll more often than not have some sort of infrastructure. Half the time you'll have the capabilities or TTPs. You'll have some, but you may not have all of them. Adversary is very hard to get to a person, like who sent me this exact email, but it's not impossible. And depending on how far you want to go in a threat intelligence report, you may not want to deliver a finished intelligence product. You may not be that type of organization. Organizations like Recorded Future, they need to produce a thorough, thought out, accurate, all the way to attribution report, like FireEye, Mandy, and all them, because people are going to criticize it. They're going to tear it apart. They're going to make sure that every T was crossed and I dotted, and they didn't just make assumptions that, oh, it must be China because they called themselves something. Sorry, skip the slide. You may just consider attribution the email address and name. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right. So you have other intelligence capabilities like HUMINT, which is human intelligence. So you actually got operators that go out, and you may have an operator that's sitting right next to the guy writing the bad code that's acting like a person that's writing bad. Of course, Synovus isn't going to have that type of capability. But yeah, that's very true. So maybe we're happy if we're able to get all the registrar email addresses and ASNs of the infrastructure that the bad guy uses, so we can block en masse. Or we can set up alerts every time this email address and person registers a new domain. We're going to go ahead and block it because we know that that person stands up infrastructure for malicious purposes. So you're not waiting. Oh yeah, yeah. So the question in the classroom was, well, not the question, the statement was that government organizations would probably, more often than not, have ability to figure out who the adversary of a cyber attack is, rather than a private organization, um, just due to their reach, their ability to get to that level. And of course, like Bank of America doesn't want to be implicated in some nation state type activity. So, all right, where do you get OSINT? It's everywhere. So I just listed a couple of examples, um, different things that I do. Um, so there's a lot of researchers that all they do is post their research on Twitter. They don't go through the trouble of blogs. They just hit it up on Twitter, and they'll say that loaded it into VirusTotal at this link. I put the IOCs on Pastebin at this link, and I may have linked it to a blog at this link, and that's it. They go on about their business. So you can write a script. Yeah, after you find out who you want to follow. We have a script that goes and scrapes all this data. Every time they post, it scrapes it, pulls it down, runs it in a sandbox, extracts the IOCs from it, and feeds it back into our threat intelligence products. And you can do that for a virtual machine, 2 virtual machines. So that's easy. Create your own feed from Twitter follows. There's tons of cybersecurity and threat intelligence blogs. Malware traffic analysis does a really good job. And they also have a great free packet capture training course with packet captures on the site, linked to their posts about malware. So you can read their blogs about the campaign that's going on. Then you can go to the packet capture training, download the PCAP from the malicious traffic, and go step by step on how they did all their research to come up with their blog posts. So that's a good one. Talos Intelligence is Cisco's, Cisco purchased Talos, so it's now a Cisco product. But the blog and their IP reputation service is free. So you can hit them up. They do really good. And they put out a podcast quarterly, I believe, called Beers with Talos, where they're all just sitting around drinking beer and talking about stuff that happened over the last 3 months. So it's pretty interesting. Proofpoint does a really good job at putting out mostly phishing related, email related threats. And they do a very thorough job. And then SANS has their daily blogs, and they also have the podcast every morning with Johannes Ulrich that keeps you up to date on things that happened in the past day or week. We'll click into some of these. I wanted to show you Cyber Crime Tracker. So this guy or group of people, they have multiple lists like this, but they have honeypots, and they have cuckoos that they're running, actually Phoenix boxes, which is a cuckoo variant, gathering all this data, and then they label it as what type of threat it is, the URL, and the IP associated with that URL at that time. So that's a really easy feed to pull in to your threat intelligence platform. Abuse CH. They have multiple lists for different types of malware, ransomware. They blacklist SSL certs, so you can put that into your procedures. And URL House, it's free, has open API. You can download the whole database if you don't want to do API calls. You can download the whole database every once in a while and block it. They're responsible for a lot of takedowns overseas of crime groups lately. And then there's Firehole. So these are lists of malicious or IP addresses that are in different categories. So you may have some that are 100% trusted, that they're malicious and you can block them out of the bat. But then you have others that are like data center IPs that you want to block. Some IPs that your servers in your data center should probably never be going to. So you can go through the list and see what applies to you. And since they're on GitHub and they're updated every couple minutes, you can just do a git pull and it updates the list. So you can do a cron job in Linux or a scheduled task in Windows to update your list. Use with caution though. Things like 8.8.8.8 will end up in these lists because malware uses 8.8.8 to see if it has an internet connection. So when you run that in the Cuckoo sandbox and people don't read the report before they publish it, they say 8.8.8.8 is bad. And if you go in VirusTotal right now, we'll do it. You'll see how many, see what it thinks about 8.8.8.8. It's connecting, well, community is saying it's good, but there's 10 plus URLs with malware associated with 8.8.8.8. And you have all these URLs down here. You have all this malware. So the untrained eye, if they don't know what 8.8.8.8 is, they think it's malicious. I guess it is, in a way. If you have dedicated DNS and routes in your environment and it's hitting 8.8.8.8, then maybe you have an issue. So that type of intelligence can be used that way. If you see DNS traffic going to DNS servers that are not approved, and you know that your internet point of presence doesn't allow DNS to flow that way, then you either have a configuration problem or you have malware. And then there's newsletters you can subscribe to. So Talos has their threat source newsletter. BA Systems, Raytheon is their MSSP. They put out a cyber threat bulletin. Recorded Future, all those are free, delivered to your inbox daily. There are some, we're going to talk about MISP in a minute, which is a threat intelligence platform that you can store all this data in. There's plugins for MISP where you can just email it, a newsletter, and it'll tear it apart, extract all the indicators, and load them up for you. And then you can go in and polish it up, but the mass of the work is done for you. It'll even pull out TLP. You can write regex, and if anybody doesn't know what regex is, it's just a pattern, looking for a pattern in the content in the file. You can tell it to look for certain things and then tag those things as such. So we have a config file that looks for names of malware, and if that name of malware is in the report, it'll add a tag to the event. This is LokiBot, or this is Dridex. And also, it'll pull out TLP indicators. So if the report's written TLP, which is traffic light protocol, which is your sharing indicator. So green, white, you can share it with anybody. Green within trusted communities. Amber is within the section that the intelligence was received by, and red is person to person. But it'll pull all that information out and tag your events with it too. All right. So this is why we went over part of the kill chain model. And this slide is a little noisy. And this is something I added today. So I was trying to play with the font to make everything fit on the slide. But so I showed that you can put various diamond models for each stage of an attack, depending on the information you've gathered. So we're going to say that reconnaissance was, we found out, so the incident's over. We have all the information. Now we're writing our report, doing our findings. So we found out that Mr. John Sucker was, he got a phishing email. from at his email address, sucker@pawn.com, from badguy@chinarules.com, from this server, come on, at Hotmail. So you see how I put the infrastructure over here. And you could say that badguy@chinarules.com could be the actor, but can you really tie that back to a person? I'd say that's more, that mailbox is more of a piece of infrastructure than it is a threat actor. Yeah, maybe. I don't know how far China Rules, and I just made that up. I have no idea what chinarules.com is. Yeah. And through interviews with Mr. Sucker, we found out that they played off his Facebook posts. He didn't want to say it, but we talked to him. He said, yeah, they got me by saying that they saw me at a game on Facebook. And they had a video of it, and I clicked the video. So we find out that it was actually a Word document that they emailed him. And that Word document had VBA macros in it. This was the hash and this was the file name. So I put that under TTPs because this threat actor uses Word docs with VBA macros. And then under the victim, it's still Mr. John Sucker, and Microsoft Word was what was exploited. And I put that he was exploited because he's the one that clicked the enable macros button. And then on installation, the victim is the desktop that he was on. The actual mal code that the VBA macro reached out to was on Pastebin. And it was a encoded XML file. And when it pulled down that XML file, it decoded it, and it was actually 229395.exe, which is this hash, which is actually a malicious hash. That's TrickBot. And TrickBot is a banking Trojan. So it looks for, it has a config file, and in that config file, it has a list of banks. And anytime you go to one of the bank's sites in the config file, it copies down your username and password that you enter. And now they have access to your bank account information. Well, they ship that off to some S3 bucket, and Amazon play with you later. So now we have all this information. What are we going to do with it so that it's searchable and you can correlate it in the future to future attacks? We need some place we can store all this data other than a spreadsheet. You don't want spreadsheet of doom. So that's when, if you don't have money for some of these big name products like Anomaly, ThreatStream, Threat Connect, Eclectic IQ, Threat Quotient, there's tons of, the marketplace for threat intelligence is $1 billion industry. They play off the big name words. It was really big, like started 5 years ago or so. It's still big, but SOAR has taken over now. So that's security, orchestration, automation, and automated response. That's the big buzzword now. If you haven't heard about Phantom, Demisto, all those products that do the analyst work for you, that's the, so if you're a salesperson, go for that. That's your lightning in a bottle. But if these products are great, there's nothing wrong. I used ThreatStream for years. Used Threat Connect when I was at SANS doing training. They give you a trial when you take the Cyber Threat Intelligence class. Great product. Eclectic IQ is a great product. They work really well with a threat intelligence standard called Stix Taxi, where it's a format of sending data in a certain way so everybody sends it the same, even though they still don't send it the same using the framework. So it cleans up some of that stuff for you. If you have the money, these are great, and you don't want to manage any type of infrastructure or anything. But if you're on a slim budget or you're comfortable with Linux command line and you have a couple VMs to spare, you can use some of these products down here. So MISP, it's malware information sharing platform. It was created by the Luxembourg CERT. Now it's sponsored by NATO and fully funded by NATO. And there's more than 305 organizations that are using MISP now. And the Luxembourg CERT also has a public MISP feed that you can get as soon as you install MISP. You turn on the feed. Now you have the Luxembourg CERT's feed going into your threat intelligence repository. No charge. Yeti is a newer threat intelligence platform. I haven't played around with it too much. It's more analyst driven, so it's good with link analysis, things like that. It can draw a map between disparate objects. So if you have multiple events, it'll say that this infrastructure over here is linked to this infrastructure, and it's really it's easy to look at and see where things connect. But they both play together. The guy that created Yeti is a big proponent of MISP, so there's integration. Maybe you use Yeti as your daily workbench, and then MISP as your long-term repository. Depends. And then you may have organizations that are MISP friendly, so you share data with them through MISP, and then you use Yeti for your internal. Crits has been around for a long time. It's one of the originals. The only detail about crits is it's extremely detail oriented. So when you put a piece of data into crits, you have to know exactly what it is. So you got to put the file path, you got to put the file name, you got to put the MD5 hash, the SHA-256 hash, the SHA-1 hash. You need to know where the registry key was modified. It's very detailed, and there's no dump it in and it'll sort it for you feature. It's all fingers on keyboard. But with that, everything is very accurate because it is what you put in. And it has a lot of modules that can integrate with other platforms. And it's all community driven. So I said a lot about MISP already. These are the links to the project site, the GitHub page, and the training VM. We were going to install the training VM, but installing it and configuring it would probably take a couple hours, and we wouldn't get through it in the class. So you can download it from that link. It says to run it in VirtualBox, but it will run in VMware. Doesn't matter. VMware will complain that it doesn't meet their OVA specifications. So you click I don't care, and it loads. And it requires very little configuration on the command line. So if you're not comfortable with command line, you can still use MISP. Almost everything is configured through the GUI. And then there's training material galore for MISP. They have one combined training packet that has most of their slides in it for the different sections of MISP, and I think it's around 300 and something slides. So, and you don't have to read through all of them. They also have it broken down in what section that you want to go into. So, go back. So we're going to see what MISP can do. So this is my MISP instance that I have sitting out on a little VPS in the cloud that I play around with. Test environment. So I've had my browser open too long and my cookie has expired. So just a second. They'll black hole you if you try to use the... Yeah, there's a lot of built-in protection in MISP because they don't want... They come from intelligence background, financial services and stuff, so they don't want you installing anything that's going to make you more vulnerable at work. So they run vulnerability scans on their software, and they got different protections in place. Failed to ban and all that stuff. All right, we got a question on the Discord chat. How would you get those indicators into your firewall to block IPs? And I will talk about that in just a minute after I show how we store them. There's a way to pull them out of the MISP API. And you can pull them out of the API of most of those products I talked about. And it's usually Python. Depends. So, oh yeah. Repeating the question. I forget we don't have microphones out there. I have some over there. The question was, is it only the clear net and not the deep net or dark net? And I said it depends, because it depends on if you want to connect to the dark web, some Tor site, onion sites, you got a Tor browser, you can do that sort of thing. You can go out there and find intelligence. But most of the intelligence that we get is from vendors that have agents that have spent years creating personas on the dark web on various forums, because they're not going to talk to somebody that's brand new off the block that pops in the forum and says, "Hey, anybody got some trick bot?" You got people that know 17 different languages, or they're fluent in one particular language that a forum talks in, and that all they do is sit on the forums, act like a bad guy, gather the information, and if it pertains to you, then they send it to you. And there's multiple vendors out there that do that. Flashpoint is the one that we use, and they're very good at that type of information. And I've talked them into creating a MISP feed. So they have their own MISP server, and it feeds right into your MISP instance with an API key. So they store all their intelligence on MISP now. And they're one of the biggest dark web vendors in the world. So it's getting out there. Also, we use Cofence Intelligence, which used to be FishMe Intelligence. They do nothing but phishing intelligence. We've talked them into doing MISP. And one other one. Domain Tools. Domains Tools, they don't have an intelligence feed per se, but they have provided libraries where all you have to do is download the modules, and you can use your Domain Tools account to enrich data. So you can put an IP address in there, right click on it and say send to Domain Tools, and Domain Tools will send you back every domain that's been is hosted on that IP address. And then you could pivot from the domains that are hosted there back to Domain Tools, and it'll tell you who registered the domain, what the risk score of the domain is, and it sends all that data directly into MISP. So there's lots of people coming around that people are going to start using these open source products, and they have a very large following. So this, what you're seeing now, is MISP. All of these events that have the little circle, red circle, are from the Luxembourg CERT. That's their logo. So we can go into one. And this is how they store all the information about. This one's Dark Hydrus, new Trojan that delivers, and it cuts off. That's not good. I think it's Gootbot. Oh, is it? Oh, it uses Google Drive for C2 communications. Oh, there it goes, right there. And these were the tags I was telling you about. So you can tag the event with different tags, and there's a community-driven tag taxonomy. People create large amounts of tags based on what they do at work every day. So the Luxembourg CERT has tagged this as OSINT, so it's not closed source intelligence, it's not HUMINT, it's not SIGINT. It was open source, that's why it's on their open source feed. Lifetime is perpetual, so it's only good for as long as it's good for. It's not infinite. They have a 50% certainty that these IOCs are legit, so that's iffy. TLP white can be shared with anyone. These EC certs, that's the European Council cert. They created their own taxonomy that has a bunch of key value pairs for malicious code equals Trojan, malicious code equals ransomware. So they use some of those. And they also have a workflow taxonomy, so you can publish the event so other people can see it, but you can also add tags that we need to go back and we need to enrich some of the data. I think that's what that tag stands for. And if you wanted to add more tags, you pop it open, and then these are only the tags that are enabled. I'll go into the settings in a minute to show how you can enable more tags. And even though it's not our event, we can add indicators to it, which will only be saved on our version of the event. And then those additions are sent back if you want them to, if you have it configured to. They can be sent back to the originator of the event and say that the Synovus SOC or the TISA SOC has added these as proposed to your event. Would you like to ingest them? And that's how you can share. You can work on, multiple organizations can work on the same event and gather data together. And then there's things called galaxies, which are just really big tags, but it helps to correlate various MISP events to each other. So we can put intrusion sets, which is MITRE attack framework, threat actors. Malpedia is a service some guys stood up in Germany that they've been recording malware and all the different characteristics of it into a massive database that anybody can go look at. And then somebody created a malware. That's off the attack framework as well. So when you look at one of these, it goes into the description, what it is, who wrote it, a little more detail, and some links to where you can find additional information about it. And they also have the MITRE attack framework built in. It looks like they didn't fill this one out, that's why it was toggled off. But if you have this information on that event or that galaxy, so if you know that Dark Hydra uses, let's see, exfiltration over a compressed data stream, then you can add it. Click the button, hit submit. So then you can build out a MITRE attack framework for that event and actor. And the MITRE attack framework, I don't even know if I want to get that deep into it today because it's kind of on a tangent.
Exploitation, let's do it.
Yeah, so it's post-exploitation framework. So this is what happened, what happened. And from initial access, so it's kind of kill chain expanded. And they've also, and this is right of bang. So what that means is right of compromise. So everything that happened from the moment the badness started till it stopped. They've also come up with pre-attack, which is how they got to the point of bang. Pre-attack is not official yet. It's still a beta product, but they saw the need for, we want to stop it before bang. We don't want to always be playing after bang. We want to try to get ahead of it. So, and they've also added the MITRE mobile attack framework for mobile device protection. And this is all built into MISP via the community. Nobody was paid to do this. People saw the need. They cloned the GitHub repository and started working. There's also, let me see if this one has any correlations. I don't think it does. It does. So you can see here on the index screen, this is the index screen where all your events are. This event has 13 correlations. So it means 13 indicators in that event match other events. So that's where you can start drawing together campaigns and TTPs of a certain threat actor, because MISP is going to, behind the scenes, tie all that information together. And there's multiple ways to view it. So you can see all the related events up here. You could click through them, see some Shadow Hammer, Operation Shadow Hammer. IOCs were found in the same event. Got some ransomware with Eternal Blue, Sophacy. And that's nice, and you can see that it's in their feed, but you can't really see the data. So they built this graph view. See if I can zoom in. So all these are events that are related to a certain attribute. You can see that attribute's just malicious, so that's not too interesting. But you can see that these two were related to this file attribute. And these two were related. So that kind of just, the more data you have, the more it drills you into what you should be looking at and where the spider web crosses. And you can build a case for that type of a threat landscape type picture for that type of event or actor. And if you, like we saw in that correlation graph, that malware tag or malicious tag, that could be throwing your correlations off. So you can disable correlation on certain IOCs if you see that it's causing too many issues. And that's all here. It's just a checkbox. So like malicious is correlated in all of these objects. So you could just turn those off because you don't want different events correlating on just the word malicious. And then you can see all the domains. And then they have the external analysis, which is just a little summary, and then a link to the event. You see this checkbox column here is the IDS column. So IDS is an intrusion detection system. But in the terms of, in MISP, that's what you use to decide if you're going to send something to a blocking state or not. So as you can see, malicious is not tagged as 2DI. So only tag it IDS if you believe that that should go to some type of blocking security infrastructure or alerting security infrastructure. And then when you do API calls, you can say, give me all the domains for events for the last 7 days that have the IDS flag set to yes. Then you know that you're only going to get the domains for the past 7 days that you have decided are worthy of blocking. And then you can see down here at the bottom, of course, the text is not marked to IDS, and the link isn't either. And the links are only hyperlinked if you choose to call it a link. If you call it a URL or a domain, it will not be hyperlinked so that you won't accidentally click on a malicious link. The next column is the sightings column. And sightings get more interesting the more people you have looking at your events, or the more automation you have on your infrastructure. So just like VirusTotal, if you have an account on VirusTotal, you can thumb up or thumb down a certain detection. So the community can say, yep, it's bad. I mean, yep, this is good or it's bad. You can do the same thing in MISP. So if a lot of people are looking at the event, or if you have, you can feed sightings back in from your infrastructure. So if you see an IPS hit or some type of security event related to OneDrive.agency, something in your environment blocked it, it can send a sighting event and say either for this event or for the entire MSP instance, for every event that has OneDrive.agency, add a sighting. So then when you go to look at sightings, that brought the window up somewhere that I couldn't see it. Let's see if I can bring it up here. When you go to look at sightings, you'll have a graph of how many times either your organization or somebody else has seen it and whether they believed it was a true positive or false positive. Yeah. Something about the way I'm sharing my screen that won't bring up the pop-up window. But basically it's a window that pops up and it'll have a time graph of how many sightings said that we believe that indicator is malicious, or we believe that indicator is a false positive. You may want to either take it out of your event or mark it as not to IDS. So you don't have enough confidence in it to put it in a blocking or alerting mode. And then you have the ability to query enrichment, which is like the domain tools enrichment that I talked about before. Or you can propose and edit, so you can add a note that'll be sent back to the person who created the event saying, I believe you spelled this wrong, or this is Microsoft OneDrive, this is legit. And then when they get that, it pops up in another column on the index, and they can action those. Or you can propose a soft delete, which is telling the person you should get rid of this indicator. It won't actually remove the indicator, but it gives them a heads up. And then to the right of that is the where you can actually change your version of the event. So you can edit it, you can delete it, or you can add enrichment to it. But if you do that, it's only editing your version. It's not going to edit the Luxembourg certs version of the same event. All right. So if you wanted to create your own event, you add an event. You can select whether this is your initial start of the event, it's ongoing, or you're doing it post-incident. We'll just do post-incident. And you can select whether you only want this server to be able to see that event. Well, I wouldn't say this server. This organization on this server to see that. You can have multiple organizations on one server. Only your organization can see this event. The community can see this event, which is everybody you're connected to on the same server. Connected communities are everybody that you have a trusted group with, so multiple MISP instances talking to each other on a trusted group, or all communities. You don't care, it just gets sent out to everybody. So we'll do organization only. I don't have any trust group set on this lab environment anyway. And then you can set what the threat level you believe this event is, and we'll put low. You can backdate it, forward date it, however you want. And we'll give it a little title, and we'll go off our slides there. So we'll say TrickBot. So go back to the slides. I'm gonna put the. I wonder if it'll let me. I don't wanna. Yeah. All right. So we take our hash and we go to add attribute. and it's going to be artifacts dropped. And this is the one thing about Miss P that made me drop commercial products. We were paying a ton of money for a commercial product, and it was able to ingest 5 types of IOCs: hashes, email addresses, domains, URLs, and IPs. Miss P can ingest over 300 different types of IOCs, anywhere from mutexes, registry keys. You can see here, these are just artifacts dropped. So you got all the different types of hashes, SS deeps, and it does have SS deep engine running. So it'll correlate SS deep hashes if you have them input, and you can set the threshold at which that correlation happens. So 60% match, 70% match. If they vary the malware just a little bit, it'll still match if you have that SS deep hash. Same thing with imp fuzzy and imp hashes. You can put patterns in files, patterns in memory. You can put regex. You can put Yara. You can put snort. You can put certificate fingerprints. I mean, I haven't found anything yet that didn't have some sort of attribute that matched what I was trying to store in my threat intelligence repository. So we're going to dump that in there. We're going to say we do want to block that if we see it. And we'll give it a contextual comment that it's a trick bot. Submit. And there's our IOC that we added. And we could add tags to it if we wanted to. I don't know if TrickBot is loaded. Let me just detroke it. So that one is loaded. I'll show you all the taxonomies in a minute. But that's Microsoft's malware taxonomy that they keep updated free of charge. And then you could add galaxies if you wanted to as well. Trick is in here. Yep, trick. So now we got our galaxy, we got our tag, we got our hash, and that's called an attribute. There's also objects. Objects are compound attributes. So for instance, for a file object, it takes all the various identifiers for a file and builds one attribute of all those identifying factors. So on VirusTotal, you get all the hashes, and you get the SSD hash. And there is a, I don't have it loaded. I don't have my API key loaded, but you can get a free API key. It has some limitations on how many queries you can put per hour. But you can pull all this information in to Miss P from a hash. It won't put it into an object yet. It'll put individual attributes. But you could right click on the hash inside Miss P, and VirusTotal will pump in all the information it has about it, including domains that it's talked to. I've had events that only had 5 IOCs. I enriched it with VirusTotal, and it turned into a 350, 400 IOC event. And I didn't have to do anything. And go on and do something else while it's churning through all that. Huh? No. No. You can set white. I'll show you all in a minute how you can set whitelist. We won't go too much, and we're running out of time a little bit. But you can set whitelist so that when it tries to import some, if it matches a regex in your whitelist, it just kicks it out. So I'm just going to do those 3, and so y'all get the gist. And you can put the state. Put that in malicious. I don't put file encoding and submit. And this is what your object's going to look like, so you can make sure that that's what you want. Hit submit, and then it looks like this. The blue square is an object. So it helps grab things together better than having a list of 100 different attributes. They're moving more towards objects, but it's a development effort to get everything into that framework. There's a Python library called PyMisp. It's written, it's maintained, updated bi-weekly. Does a lot of these API calls for you. And it's more attribute based, so they have to rewrite that whole library to go for objects. But they are working on it. So, and then if you didn't want to type in a whole bunch of MD5 hashes, you can just copy this. And this won't make objects, but you can do this. I haven't found a limit yet. I've put in a whole blog entry into the free text import tool. It takes some time if you put that much data in there, but you can just dump it, hit submit, auto classifies, payload delivery, what type of hash it is. You can update all the comment fields at once and submit. It'll say free text ingestion is queued, so it's in the background doing all that stuff. You can click on view event again. Make sure my workers are running. My workers are dead. Restart workers. There we go. It's because I rebooted. So when you reboot, restart your workers. That's just growing pains. So there's because I restarted my workers and boom, it's in there. So that's everything that we got from VirusTotal just thrown in there automatically. And you can put tags into the free text import tool as well. It's just comma separated if you know the whole tag. If you know it's MS Caro, malware, full, whatever, you can put those in, comma separated, and it'll add it. If you do it, do this. I'm just going to delete these so we can do it again. So populate from, and you can see there's other imports as well. If you use Threat Connect, or even I wrote the ThreatStream integration. If you use ThreatStream, there's an integration that you can pull data out of ThreatStream and upload it into MISP without altering the data. It has a beta OCR, so you can load in a PDF file and it'll try to read it, or an image. It'll import a cuckoo export. It'll import emails. CSVs have to be in they have to have columns that are named for the attributes you want to ingest. It'll import OpenIOC from FireEye. So over here on tags, if a tag doesn't exist and you type something in this, it's going to create it. It should create a tag. So that tag didn't exist before I hit the free import button. But now it does, and now it can be reused. If it matches a tag, it won't overwrite that tag. It'll just use the tag that it matches. But if the tag doesn't exist, it just creates a new tag. And I'll show you in a minute where all those tags are stored. So you don't have to worry about it, creating a tag before you import your events. You can just do it on the fly. All right. And here's where I was talking about enriching. So this will be populated with a lot more modules if you had them configured, like VirusTotal, domain tools. But you can click on the enrichment you want to use, and then it'll run against every attribute in the entire event. That's the same thing as using the built-in one over here that I showed earlier. And I'm not sure why it's not showing up now. But it runs it against all of them. It just takes some time to run. If you have multiple events that you want to merge into one big event, that's what this option is for. You just need the ID that you're going to copy. What else? You can email the person who created the event. Publishing the event, it makes it viewable to other people, either in your organization, whoever you decide to share it to. It's not viewable until you publish. So you don't have to worry about unfinished work going out and being viewed by other people. They added this little functionality. If you have multiple organizations that you're sharing to, you can click this little graph and it'll show who all that event is going to be shared with when you hit the publish button, depending on how you've configured your sharing circles and everything like that. So right now it's only being shared with our organization. I think this does the same thing, but in a graph type view. So you got the trust circle type view, and then the link analysis type view. Publish it. Now it's published. So that was creating an event from scratch. You can also import an event. If somebody exports one of their events in MISP format, you can import it and it doesn't lose any data. It copies it verbatim from their instance. If you import sticks, which is the framework for sharing intelligence that MITRE created, it may, not everything maps one for one with sticks in MISP format, so you may lose some of the data in sticks when going over to MISP. And that's why it says it's lossy. Sticks, I'll go back to that. So Sticks 1.1 uses XML. Sticks 2.0 is all JSON, and a little more broke down as to where the fields are listed. On this same page, you can list all attributes in the entire system, and you can search attributes. So if we wanted to look for that hash, I don't know if it's still, well, that don't work. Or is that the whole thing? That's the whole thing. And you can use percent signs as wildcards. So I want to look for that indicator. You don't have to tell it what type. You could, if you want to narrow it down, you could tell it what type or what category. Or if you only want to find ones that are marked to block. And then it'll come back and show you which events that IOC is in. This is good when you've set it to block and it fires for you or your analyst and you want to go see why it fired. You search for it, leads you to the event. It also is a good way of dealing with false positives. If you have one that keeps firing, you can come to this page and remove the IDS flag or delete it out of the system so it'll stop firing in your blocking or alerting devices. This is relatively new. It's a built-in REST client, so you can play with the API in the GUI. So you can, it actually has a template builder, query builder, if you don't know all the terms, or you can write it yourself. So we want to search. And then it puts this into the body, and you just fill out which sections you want to search on. And you can, so we want to return in JSON value. So Ryan asked the question earlier, how do you get these indicators into your security devices? This is how. You can build your queries here, and then use a Python script to input them into whatever device you're trying to block. Or you can use curl whatever your method is of choice. Just getting rid of all the optional stuff. So it was a 200 response, so it was good. And then where is it? We want to show, I didn't click use show results. It just gave me the result saying it was a good query. So that's what it looks like when it comes back. So it has the attribute. It has, since we searched attributes. So it gave you the attributes and then everything about that attribute, what event it's in, what category it is. It's just everything you saw in the GUI, just in JSON, so that it's system readable. And then it even gives you the curl command that you can copy and paste into a cron job or whatever you want to run. And it also gives you the PyMisp Python query that you can use. So it kind of took all the hard work out. And that only existed for the past month. So I could have used that about a year ago. And then they also have a built-in automation page that says everything you can do with the REST API. All the different fields that you can use to pull out data. How you can get the data returned to you in CSV, JSON, XML. You can dump things into a response policy zone for your DNS servers so that when somebody makes a call out to it, it just drops it. Most malware depends on DNS. So it has a Bro compatible export where you can just dump it directly into Bro, which is an open source IDS. It's also on the Security Onion build, their IDS. Then you can download it via XML. You can also use MISP as a malware repository. So it has a directory that it can store malware samples in an encrypted state. So you can upload the malware, download it, and you can set the password for extracting that malware from the zip files. You can do that via the API as well. You can add tags, remove tags. And then you can also do administrative tasks like those workers. It could look for workers working, and every time they die, restart them. Or you can set up a cron job to do the same thing. So we'll get into, in the last couple of minutes, tags. So these are all the tags that we're currently using in MISP, and you can go through. There's 21 pages of it right now. But these are the taxonomies. So these are groups of tags that people have created and loaded for you to use so you don't have to recreate them. The biggest one is the Varus tag taxonomy, which is the framework that Verizon uses for their annual breach report. If you've heard about that. They put out a report of the past year's threat landscape as a result from reported breaches, how they happened, what the threat vectors were, things like that. And they get that data from incidents being classified with tags from this framework. And you can click the little I to see what's in the framework. So these are all the tags, breaks it down so you can use them to classify your own events. And this gets into the area of running metrics on what type of events you're seeing in your environment, so that you can report that to the higher level, the executives and the board, so they can make better decisions on where to spend their money. Or you can use it to validate that controls that you do have in place are working. And then tag collections are just what it sounds like. You can put a group of tags into a collection, if you use a group of tags all the time, you can add it to a collection, so that way you can just say, put all these tags on it and just click one button instead of tag each individual one. These are the galaxies, same concept. They're all user contributed, and you can create your own galaxies. It's just a JSON file on the server, the back end that you can load, or you can contribute to the GitHub project and they'll load them in for public consumption. So this is the import regex. So if you import something that has program data in the file path, it's going to change it to wildcard, all user profile wildcard backslash for the correlation to work better. So it's going to remove, like users, it's going to remove the username if you put that file path in. So if that's users, Robert Nixon, app data, it's going to take out users and just replace everything with this. And that's more for the correlation side of the house. And then you have the signature whitelist, which uses the same regex as this. So for, if I didn't want to import 8.8.8.8 ever, it would be / 8.8.8.8 / and then it wouldn't import that. Actually be 8. We won't get into regex syntax, but it'd be / 8 / .8 / whatever. You got to call out the dots. Warning lists. So these are nice. People have created warning lists to let you know that if you import any attribute that's in one of these warning lists, it pops up a red triangle with an exclamation mark on it that says you might not want to put this into blocking mode because it's a list of known sinkholes. You don't want to block a sinkhole. It's a list of, it's on the list of Office 365 IPs. You don't want to block that. And warning lists are actually available outside of MISP. It's a separate GitHub repository that you can use in other appliances if you wanted to pull it down. If you wanted to put this in your proxy or in your IPS so that somebody doesn't block things accidentally, it's a good thing to use. I think I have one of these on here. I created the top 1,000 sites from Cisco Umbrella. That's the one I maintain. It used to be the Alexa top 1,000, but that's no longer free and not maintained anymore. So Cisco has took it upon themselves to do it since they bought OpenDNS. They see somewhere around 70% of the world's traffic, so DNS traffic. Notice lists are kind of the same thing, but it's right now the only one in there is GDPR, so that's the European privacy regulations that went into effect, and it'll tell you that if you have this enabled and you put something in MISP that may go against GDPR, it would flag it. It's pretty cool. And then those objects that we created before, these are all the templates that create those objects. All right. How do I make this big without going into presentation mode again?
Yeah, from print slide at the top.
Oh yeah, presenter mode. Okay. See, did it again. Oh well, we're gonna go through it like this. I ain't messing with it. All right, we went through what MISP can do. We have 12 minutes left. So I showed you how you can put all this data into MISP. So what do you do with it after you put it in MISP? that's where some open source projects can come into play, or even commercial ones like IBM's Resilient is a good case management platform. Archer has one that's a good case management platform. The Hive is a open source free one created by the French CERT um, that does a lot of the things the commercial products does, and integrates well with MISP. So every time a MISP event is published, it can send an alert to the Hive to say, hey, check this out. And you can import all the stuff from the MISP event directly into the Hive. Push the button. And it's also bi-directional. So when you get done with an event in the Hive, you can push it to MISP. So if your analysts work an event all day and they have all this good information in the Hive and they want to put it in MISP, they don't have to recreate the wheel, and they just push a button and it makes an event in MISP. Done. It also connects with something called Cortex. Cortex is created by the same people as the Hive, and it is like having 50 analysts looking at open source intelligence, doing lookups like on VirusTotal, domain tools, whois records, onFee, Firehole, all those things I showed you and more. There's about 117 different analyzers that Cortex has right now. You put the indicators in there, it goes out and grabs all this data and pulls it back. Done. You don't have to do it. You can go interview the Mr. Sucker while that's working, and then you have all the data when you come back. Let's see if I can demo that for you. Peter, your MacBook is dying. I think we got enough, though, to make it through. 10%. So this is Cortex. And these are the analyzers we have enabled right now for Synovus. Still not displaying. We did an upgrade to a beta, and now the analyzers won't display. And that means it probably isn't going to do the work that we need to do. But as you can see on here, Cybercrime Tracker, that one list that we showed you, it can go out and check that. It can go out and check DShield, domain tools, Firehole, FortiGuard for URL categories. It can check the MISP warning list. It can check all your MISP instances to see if that attribute exists. It can check MaxMind for geolocation, and so on and so on. VirusTotal, VirusShare, ThreatCrowd, and there's more that we don't have. I wrote this one. It takes shortened URLs, expands them, grabs the expanded URL, and goes searches that. So we'll see if this kicks off, but I have a feeling it's going to fail. There's not anything on the. I decided to join a beta program for the Cortex, and it bit me today. So it is what it is. Beta is good until it's not. So this is the Hive. If you've used any type of case management platform before, they're almost all identical. You create a case, you can build templates, which are what these are at the bottom, or you can create an empty case. I'm just going to create a research request. So somebody has asked me to do some type of research for them. And I'm going to say TrickBot hash endpoint on endpoint. I don't know why I capitalized P, but yeah, we're going to say it's red because we're not sure. We can change that later, but for now we're going to say it's red. Now you have your event, and you can put tasks in there on this tab that says if it was a more well-defined template, check your log solution, look for other emails delivered to other people. You can break it down so anybody that jumps into the system knows exactly what to do, and then they can check, they can start it. When they start a task, they can close it, and then you can get metrics on how long it took a person to work the event, things like that. You load your observables here. These two instances aren't tied together, so that's why I gotta do this. And you can do one, or you can do one per line, or one single multi-line observable. So if it has carriage returns in it, you can tell it to ignore the carriage returns. If it has a carriage return, it knows that you're putting more than one in there. You can say it's an IOC or not an IOC, which is API related. Same thing with the IDS flag. And then have we seen it or not? And then you can put any type of tags you want. And it remembers tags you've typed before. I don't know if I've done TrickBot before. So there you go. And you have to add a tag or a description. That's one or the other. So there's your indicator, and then you go over to the actions field and run analyzers. No analyzers are available. If this was working as it's supposed to, it would list all the analyzers for that type. And then you select which analyzers you want to run, or all, and then it'll kick off jobs, little Python scripts for each one. Get the JSON, bring it back. And then when it brings it back, it puts little, where it says no reports available, it'll put little mini tags that are color coded on how bad it believes that report is. Green, it doesn't think it's bad. Yellow, suspicious. Red, there's something to look at. And then you can click on each one of those little reports, and it brings up the whole report from that analyzer. One of the other things it does is, say it's a virus total report, and there's other indicators, you can tell it to extract all those indicators and add them to your case, or not. If you see a lot of indicators that you think you should have in your case and research and go search in your SIM or your log solution, you can do that, or you can ignore them. And then you can run the analyzers all over again on those type of events. And since we only have 4 minutes left and my analyzers aren't working, we can open it up to questions. I know that was a lot of information, but nothing. I'm good. You want me to cut it?
Yeah, just because I'm not going to be in front of your camera.
Ryan's typing a question.
You can keep Discord.
Ryan's good, so you're good.
Ryan's good. Okay. Okay. So just a couple quick words. Again, thank you, Robert. That was thank you. Trouble to share the off with us. Robert is our director of Tradecraft for ISSA. Again, we do have student memberships there. They're $30 right now to join. I want to say that there will be presentations later in the year through ISSA. One of our